Hey friends, Wayne over here at the Ram Man Inc. Well, what I'm going to continue to talk about is I'm going to continue to talk about my planetaries. Here it is, the week after Christmas. And if you've been following along with me, I've been talking about epicyclic gears, or planetaries, and of course, in the big axle world, in the big truck world, off-road world and military, they can be commonplace. Many people consider planetaries, planetary wheel ends, hub reduction, as basically being the ultimate axle. And why is that? The reason being, they found out quite some time ago, basically the 50s, that if you can do your reduction gearing, or some of it, on the very end of the axles, out on the spindle, that depending on the reduction, depending on the design, whether you're talking about a straight cut setup, 3 planetaries, Rockwell type, whether you're talking about the Volvo patent type, which uses the spider gears and the hub, much like you see in rear axle. This is Volvo patented this, 2-to-1. So, what they found out was that if you do this reduction on the end, power is transmitted from the internal teeth of the ring gear to the 4 planetaries. Now this design's got 4 planetaries. This spreads the torque load over 2.5 times more gear tooth contact area. Yes, so this is review. What does a planetary system consist of in its simplest form? Planet assembly with planet gears. You have to have a ring gear, which these rotate around, and then you have sun gear, which is inside the planets. So, your sun gear your floating sun gear attaches to the end of the shaft. The floating sun gear attaches to the end of the shaft. And so now you have gone from this little stuff, which can be sheared off, to this. It's helical gears. Why do they do that instead of straight? This is real high tech. This is even increasing the surface area by, depending on usually what the angle is, somewhere between 6 and 15%. So, we're going from this to that. Which then goes from that surface area to these 4. surface areas and the pin. The gears are enclosed by the ring gear. So they can't escape. They only have one choice. They get to turn. So, you have transferred the load from this to the carrier. That's what you've done. Now, these are automatic transmission planetaries. But on axles and big buggy life, if you will notice right here, we have the pictures of the things that I just described. We have a floating ring gear. The ring gear must be attached to the spindle. We have a sun gear. We have a planetary spider cover. So, if this were an axle, these pins would be longer. These pins would be longer, and this end plate would be drilled for it. And so, when you get all the way down to it, what you have actually turning your shit, instead of this, you have these 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 half-inch tool steel pins. That's what these are. That's what you have actually turning your wheel. So you're going from this to this. And where do you get planetaries from in real life? Well, you get them out of automatic transmissions. That's where they come from. All automatic transmission is a series of planetaries, usually 1 or 2, at least 1 per gear. Often they do 2 gears. But that's what they are. An automatic transmission is nothing but a couple, 2 or 3 planetaries back to back. Forward planetary, your rear one, whatever else. That's what they are. So, if you can take a planetary out of a late model heavy duty GM transmission that goes behind Camaros, Z06s, ZL1s and the like, these will do the job. Here's GM's upgrade. This one is a 5-pinion Planet. This is factory on the big horsepower cars, like the Camaros. And Sunax actually makes a 6-pinion, which goes behind the new Vet and that 1,000 horsepower new 632 Elephant motor that they've got, and that new 475 transmission. But anyway, this is getting carried away. So, these planets that are in the automatic, they're taking the full load. So, if you split them up and you put them at the 4 wheels, you're going to be good to go. So, that's what planetaries do. And so, what they found out was that if you put your gear reduction on the very end of the axle Every single part from there forward can be cut in half. What do I mean by cut in half? It can be cut in half by the weight, by the class, and by its torque and horsepower specifications. That's what that means. What it means is you double the capacity of that also. Every single thing, if something is outfitted with planetaries, every single thing upstream of that is essentially half the load. I'll read it to you from Volvo. New high-tech, this patent one. This is one you see on the military trucks. Meritor uses this. And you guys watch all them mud buggies and them stadium trucks. These big old straight cut. That's like what you see on axle techs. So, with hub reduction, the rear axle gearing is reduced to half at the driven wheels. This gives a torque multiplication factor of 2 to 1. Since the torque increase takes place at the outer ends of the drive shafts, the stress on both shafts and transmission is halved. We're talking about U-joints. We're talking about everything. That's why when you look at some of those planetary axles, especially like on a military truck, they got little bitty pumpkins in them. They'll have these little bitty pumpkins in them. Why do they got little bitty pumpkins in them? Because they don't have to have a giant ass ring gear with 50 or 60 teeth to get to the 5s or the 6s or the 7s. Are you with me? You don't have to have a giant ring gear. Now I want you to think about something. What if you were to bolt on a set of planetaries? What if you could just bolt on a set of these behemoth some bitches? What if you could bolt it directly on the end of a truck axle? Like, let's say, this is a Dana 70 hub. Y'all all seen it, right? Here's a Dana 80 hub. Wrong bearing. See what I'm getting after? Now check this out. Y'all recognize this? This is a Dana 60 front spindle. This is a Dana 60 30 spline shaft factory. Just like came in all of them from 83, 91, all are off in there. All the same. So, you got your Dana 60 spindle right there, and there's your shaft, right? Most of y'all are used to seeing something like this, though. I ain't gonna put it down. Most of y'all are used to seeing a Dana 60 factory hub like that with the lockers. That's what most of y'all are used to seeing. something like this. Drops in there. That's what y'all are used to seeing. Now, I tell you, and I've been talking about it in my series, you guys didn't know this, but there's a Dana 60 inner bearing. This is the factory part for this right here. Now, you see that thing right there? You see that big ass behemoth right there? That's a Dana 80. That's a Dana 70. And there's the Dana 60. 60, 70, and 80. Now watch. This is Dana 60 spindle. This is Dana 80 bearing. Voila! This is a Dana 80 hub. It's extremely similar. The mouth's just a little bit bigger on one. There's your 70 hub, which has got this much bigger bearing. So 70 hub and an 80 hub. Voila. So, I just taught all y'all off-roaders and rock buggies and all that old bullshit for you guys that are looking for super strong, badass shit. So, if you run and lock and hubs, that's all fine and dandy. But you're limited with that right there. And if you want to run some drive frames or some pucks, all you gotta do is get you some hubs off rear axle. All you gotta do is go to the wrecking yard and get you some Dana 70 or Dana 80 hubs, and you'll get that great big old bearing. You'll get these two great big old bearings. That's what you'll get. Now, that was a little secret. So, I'm going to show you that an 80 will go on and a 70 will go on. There's a Dana 70. There's a Dana 70 hub. Voila! So, if you want to do a hub upgrade and a giant bearing upgrade on a factory Dana 60 spindle, that's all you got to do. Let me remind you of something now. And we ain't even talking about the front ones, we just talking about the back ones to take all the load. That's why they're so fucking big. Let me remind you again, for those that looked away. Well, I'll give you a new one. Here's your 60 inner. There's your 70 inner. And there's your 80. So, it doesn't cost you $2,000 to do a massive, massive upgrade on a 60 spindle. Junkyard parts. That's all it takes. Junkyard parts. You can put a 60 or a 70 hub on front spindle. Junkyard parts. Basically, you've almost doubled the capacity. So, you ever looked at one of these? I'll show you. See, this is a 60 rear snout spindle. That's a 60 front. This is spindle in off my 70 out there. You notice something? Yeah. So, Dana 60 axles, especially the fronts, were rated at about 4,500. It's not because of this. And it ain't got anything to do with that. It ain't got anything to do. Gross vehicle weight and load weight and shit. It ain't got a damn thing to do with it. It's all about the bearing. And what are Dana 80s rated for? They were always rated conservatively. Most of the Dana 70 HDs and the Dana 80s, really, they'll carry a whole lot more weight, but the wheels are small and the tires are small. The Dana 80s are rated at 11,000. Dana 80s rated at 11,000, that's a conservative. And a 70, an HD 70, this is an HD 70. It's rated at 10. So, can you think of anything better to bolt your planetaries on? No, I can't think of a damn thing better. That's your first little upgrade so you can bolt on your universal planetaries.